Today we will start with Docker, right? And by this time, I think you have an idea on what is VMware, right? There is something called virtualization. Just in simple words, there have been lot of technology which came into virtualization, which is actually the core basic to cloud computing also, right? Earlier, a lot of tools came into the market first before this cloud computing concept has came into picture. A lot of virtualization techniques came to the market, VMware, VirtualBox, and like that, lots of virtualization techniques came into the market. So, what those technology, that techniques does to you is it will allow you to install some software on top of your laptop on your operating system. You are running Windows, and in Windows, you will install some virtualization hypervisor software. What this software will do is it will virtualize your physical resources. For example, you have 10 GB of RAM and nearly 10 GB of 10 core CPU. You have one machine. If you install the hypervisor inside this machine that has 10 CPU and 10 GB RAM, then it will allow you from the hypervisor tool, it will allow you to create multiple machines. You can create one Ubuntu server, one Windows machine, one Linux machine, different Linux machine flavor. So like that, you can actually create multiple machines, and all these machine will share resources with whatever resources the main host machine has. It will share those resources. For example, this machine will get one CPU and 1 GB RAM, and all the machine can get that much, or you can change. But of course, it cannot exceed because your host operating system has not more than 10 CPU and 10 GB RAM. So the individual virtual machine should fall within this limit. Got it? So that's what it is, virtualization. And when you do the virtualization, you have the option to create the network also. You can create virtual network and connect all the machine into this virtual network, which means these machines can communicate each other. Just like think about your cloud computing easy to machine, they can communicate each other by means of the VPC IP. Same way, through a private network, which is actually a virtual network, they can communicate each other. Right? So, like this, lot of things that you can set up. You can actually set up everything, a network, right? It's a virtual network and a number of machines connected to that network. Everything that you can create in a single machine using these hypervisor tools. And the most popular hypervisor tools were are VMware, Zen. This is free one, Zen and KVM also that you can install on Linux. It's free. Then Hyper-V from Microsoft, then VirtualBox from Oracle. So, like this, a lot of hypervisor tools came into the market back then. Using one of these tools, you can actually set up this kind of environment. You can convert a physical machine into a virtual machine. So again, there was some problem. Yeah, what I'm talking about is this 10 CPU which I talked about is the host machine. That means you think about your laptop. Your laptop has 10 CPU. But if you create virtual machines inside your laptop, you would give a lesser value, maybe one CPU, because that one CPU is taken. from your host operating system. Now only 9 GB is left or 9 CPU is left, like this. This is the actual hardware that you have in your laptop, or I would say in the host machine. Host machine is the one which hosts all these VMs or virtual machines. Okay, so and these tools have been so popular. The reason is actually think about a typical infrastructure. You wanted different applications, right? There would be web server machines, there would be database machines, Tomcat machines, like that. There are different software component. And earlier there was no way to split this component into multiple machines, right? Splitting the software component would also include probably creating separate machines and installing these software components in those machines. But it's, I mean, if you have to buy, if you have 10 software component and if you have to buy 10 machines to run your software, it doesn't look really good, right? So in order to overcome this problem, these hypervisors came into the market and they gave a good way of isolating the applications. For example, you will create multiple virtual machines, probably different operating system, it doesn't really matter. There are different machines, and this machine will run Apache, this machine will run Tomcat, this will run database, and like that different machine will serve different roles. So you could get a good level of isolation between the machines with hypervisor without having to purchase physical machine for each and everything, which is good. Okay, and there is one problem with this setup actually. Like I said, all this virtual machine you have to create from the hypervisor. You just they are actually, even though I call it virtual machine, they are actually like a real machine, right? Assume this machine have got 30 GB hard disk out of 1 terabyte, which is there in the host machine. It has 1 terabyte. 30 GB is given to this machine, and inside that 30 GB you would create a partition, just like whenever you want to install your operating system, you would install it and then you will create the partitions, right? All these things you will do, then on that partition you will make it primary and install your operating system. So whatever steps that you would follow in a traditional operation, you follow the same steps in case of virtual machine creation, because that's what we do, right? Basically, it will be like a actual operating system. You need to install it from a CD, right? You need to download the ISO file, then connect a CD to your host machine, then access that CD through this device, and then install this device with the necessary operating system. Whatever operating system you want, you can install on it. So these are actually like a actual machine. They have their own operating system, they have their own kernel, whatever software that you are running in them, those software are also separate. Apache, right? Then the WordPress files, all these things are actually separate thing, and you need all of them. Each machine will have the same kind of setup. All machine will have its own operating system, its own kernel, right? This could be Windows machine, Windows OS, and its own kernel. It could be Linux machine, its own kernel. So like this, every machine will have its own operating system and kernel, which is actually an overhead. Even though you are getting this kind of isolation, you are compromising a lot of things. You are losing, right? You are actually losing a lot of advantages by wasting a lot of resources. Every machine will have to run an operating system inside it, then that itself is a overhead, right? For the kernel it needs some power, right? Each operating system it need to run some system process that again needs some power, so you get only the remaining power available to you, which is a kind of overhead to you, right? And lately, and even the cloud computing, actually even before cloud computing, these virtualization techniques were there. Then slowly these cloud computing providers, what they did is they adapted one of these virtualization technique and they implemented them into their environments. Like in case of like there is some tools also came in the market like OpenStack, right? OpenStack and Eucalyptus, right? There are few things, and AWS uses Eucalyptus. It is a uh, framework that they have set up in their machine that provides them the options to create the virtual machines in host machine, creating the network, right? Combining multiple host machine together and working on them, right? Creating the databases, right? Like that, lot of features these one of these tools would add, and every cloud computing provider today, along with this virtualization, they would use such kind of orchestration tools to set up their data centers to convert them into a cloud computing data center. So basically, whenever you are creating a EC2 instance from AWS, what you get is actually a virtual machine. AWS is running some hypervisor in the back. I think they are using Xen or KVM. They are using both actually. Xen, KVM are free hypervisor softwares available, and AWS backbone is one of them. When you create a new EC2 machine, you are actually getting a Xen virtual machine or a KVM virtual machine, even though you don't really care or you don't, at least you don't know, right? So, but this is actually what happens when you create a EC2 machine like that. These cloud computing providers back then they adapted these virtualization techniques and they turned their entire data center into a cloud computing model. Again it will keep on moving, the more technology would keep on coming, and the virtualization has these disadvantages. And recently a new methodology came called containerization. Docker is an example for that. What containerization does is, you have a host machine, of course. You need a host machine where you want to run your containers or virtual tools. So assume this host machine is running Linux operating system, and you create a container inside this host operating system. It's actually not one container, you can create a number of containers. The advantage with these containers is you can actually log into these machines, right? Assume this is a Ubuntu container and this is a Red Hat container. Like that, you can create multiple Linux containers and you can log into this container just like you will log in using putty to your EC2 machine. Same way, you can get the SH access to this machine. You can work on this machine just like you would work on a normal EC2 machine. If you want to install Apache, you can install Apache. If you want to install Tomcat, you can install Tomcat. The same steps will work on this machine. This will act, what I try to say is this will actually look like a actual machine. It is not. It is a container that probably all it contains is some binary and library files which are necessary to run Ubuntu. The remaining Linux files are actually shared with the host operating system. This is the shared libraries and binaries. And every container will share this library and binary. Apart from, let's say this is a Ubuntu container, then in that case, this container need to contain a little bit of binary and library files which are specific to Ubuntu. But as you can see, this will not, it will not save the complete binary libraries. It would share most of them with the host operating system. And all containers does the same thing. Probably they will contain a very little amount of binaries and library files which are specific to their operating system. The remaining is shared with the host operating system. And inside the container you will set up Apache. If you want Apache, you will install Apache. If you want to download WordPress, you will download WordPress. If you want to set up a Tomcat machine, you will set up a Tomcat machine. So whatever application that
Basically,
you want to run in the container.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So, if the container is, operating on Windows and our kernel is Linux, so how would the resources be shared? I mean, it would be
Actually,
different, right?
Docker is currently does not support inbuilt. It does not support Windows boxes. It's only Linux for now. But yeah, for now, it's only Linux.
So, can we install Docker on Windows as Windows as the kernel?
On a Windows host machine, there are ways to install Docker, but it is not done. Actually, again, it is more like creating a virtual environment inside Windows, then install Docker on top of it, something like that. By native, Docker does not have the features to be installed on a Windows machine also. So the host should be Windows and the container should be, host should be Linux, container should be Linux too. Okay, right. So what this container contains is only the application. Whatever application that you want to deploy into this container will contain that your Apache, your Tomcat, your Java application or PHP application, whatever you will contain inside this container, and probably a very little amount of libraries and binaries file that are required for running this particular flavor of Linux. Okay, perfect. And even you can create the network. You will get a network to which all containers are connected to, right? And they can communicate each other by means of this network. This machine is a Apache machine. This would be a Tomcat machine. This will be a database machine. So like that, you can create multiple containers whenever you want to run multiple software component, and this container can actually communicate each other by means of some private IP. It would create a virtualized network also inside the Docker host machine to which each and every container can connect to. So, in short, what you get with containerization is the same level of isolation that you would get with hypervisors, but without the overhead of the virtual machines. There is no virtual machines here. These are nothing but the containers which contains only your application, nothing else. I mean, there are of course some libraries and binaries, but what I am trying to say is whatever the container need to have, it will have. No more, no less. Or whatever you want to copy into this container or deploy into this container, you can do it. That would become the custom settings of that container. So that's what a Docker is. Yeah, this just a picturization, the difference between hypervisor and containers. In case of hypervisor, you will have a machine. Assume this is your laptop, and your laptop has an operating system. It is running Windows, and inside Windows you install some hypervisor tools. Let's say Hyper-V, and inside Hyper-V you have the option to create machines. So you would create multiple machines like this. This is the first machine, second machine, third machine. Each machine has its own operating system, guest operating system, its own binary and library files. Then whatever application that you deployed on top of it, that you can do. In case of Docker, it's your laptop, it's a single machine. There you have a Windows, Linux operating system running. And once you install Docker, then you have the chances to create the containers. I mean, containers are normally created by downloading the images from internet or configuring custom images. So these images are used for creating the containers. And as you can see, each container will have the application that you have deployed on top of it. In addition, it will have some little bit of binaries and libraries that it is going to share with the host operating system. So this is the difference between Docker and a hypervisor. So I'm going to install Docker in my server. So first thing I'll do is I already have a machine. I will stop this one. Amber, got any question? Okay, I'm going to log into this machine. Okay, right. So I'm going to install Docker in my server. This is some kernel module in Linux which you need to install if you want to install any kind of virtualization setup. Right? A Linux image extra virtual. Okay, I think before that I should have run apt-get update command. Okay, first let me run apt-get update command. Then I will run this command. Otherwise, right, my system doesn't know the repository details. Mhm. It will take little, yeah. All right, and this I'm adding this key and going to install Docker. Is the command apt-get install command. Okay, run this command docker images. it would show you the list of images that you have. So I will tell you the how you would create a container initially. And there's a website called hub.docker.com. And if you click on explore button over here, you can actually see a list of containers, a list of images actually. You can simply download these images, and from this image you can create a container. So there's a image called nginx. This is nothing but, if I download this image and create a container from this image, my image will contain an operating system. I mean, technically not, but yeah, you can find an operating system inside this machine. And also you can see nginx is installed inside this machine. So depending on what I want, let's say now what I want is a WordPress website. What I can do is I can search for a WordPress here. Here I can search for WordPress image. I will get a WordPress image. So what if I do? What if I download this image and create a container using this particular image? Then I will get a WordPress container. The container will be running WordPress. Got it? So that's what it is. And this is how you can install. This is how you can install. Uh, sorry, I mean you can create containers by downloading these images from here. Okay. Now I want to create a Ubuntu container. What I can do is I can choose this Ubuntu image. Click on this image. You will be taken to the image page. Here you can see on the right side you can see the command that you need to run inside your Docker host to get this image. So in order to get this image, you can run the command docker pull ubuntu, which will actually download this image from hub.docker.com. So let me run this command docker pull ubuntu, which will actually download an image file from hub.docker.com. It's in progress. Okay, it is downloaded. So now I run the command docker images. I can see the image that I have downloaded. As you can see, it's just 111 MB. That's it. And you know the reason. This image that you have downloaded is not a actual Ubuntu operating system. It is nothing but some set of libraries and binaries that are required for running a Ubuntu operating system. That's it. That's why it is very small in size. So from this image, I can create a container now. I already downloaded the image. Now it is time to create a container. Do you know how much time the container creation will take? Actually, it is not a container creation that happens. It's actually on this image, it will start running. That's it. It's not like, so I will show you. I'm going to run this command. This is the command docker run -ti ubuntu. I mean, I need to mention from which image I want to create the container, right? Ti indicate a interactive mode. And at the end, I can mention what command I need to execute on the container, right? This command, I know it creates the container. Then I specify some command here. What actually happens is this container will be created and this command would be executed on that container. So if you execute the command bash inside a container, you get access to the bash terminal of that container. So that is why I am running this command. So I'm going to run this command which will create a container. That's it. It takes less than 1 second to create the container. And you are already logged into that container as user root. Who am I? Command would not be there. I suppose it's there actually. Yeah, run this command. You can see you are logged in as root. You are inside the container. You can see earlier it was something like this. Now it is something like this. So this is nothing but a container. I created a container and I am inside that container. If I want to install in this container, I can run the command apt-get update and apt-get install Apache. If I run apt-get update inside the container, remember I am running this command inside container and it's working, right? So what happened is I have my EC2 machine. Inside the EC2 machine, first I downloaded some Ubuntu image. Using this image, I created one container. The container contains some library files and binary files which are required for Ubuntu. Then on top of it, I am going to install Apache in it. So the command is nothing but normal commands. First, you run this bash command to get access to the bash shell. Now you are running this apt-get update command to update yourself with the latest repository. Your container is now updated. Now I am going to install Apache in the container. Command is apt-get install Apache 2. This particular command, if I run it, it would install Apache inside the container. Okay, so that's done. Yeah, that is done. So I installed Apache inside the container. Now I want to download WordPress. I can go to the www HTML folder, download WordPress, right? I mean, you got it, right? What I meant to say. So whatever you can work on this container just like you would work on a EC2 machine. You install software, you install WordPress, right? You deploy your application, then people can start using that. And of course, it is a private network, it's not a public network, but you can make this, you know how, even though if it is a private network, you know how you can connect to the container from outside. That we will discuss anyway, right? So that's what it is. Do one thing, take a short break of 5 minutes and we will continue in 5 minutes, right? So the advantage with containers is you can choose to install what you want to install in the container just like in a normal machine, and there is no overheads. Let's say you have 10 CPU in the machine, host machine. The each containers that you are going to create are effectively using these whatever CPU assigned to them only for your application. So it is more like, I mean, you are inside a single machine, you install Apache, Tomcat, everything. How much resource usage this machine hall setup will take? Probably the container would need the same thing, nothing extra. Little bit extra, of course, but it's very, very negligible. So if developers, if you have different people in your team, developers want to do some testing, right? What they can actually do is, it is if it is their laptop, they can actually set up a similar environment like in production, and they can deploy the software into these containers and they can do their testing inside this container. So this is how a developer laptop will look like. It will contain multiple containers, one container running Linux and Apache, other container running Ubuntu, right, Red Hat and Tomcat. This machine contains Ubuntu and something. So like that, you have different machines, different containers, and this container work together to serve your application, serve your software. So developer can set up such an environment in their laptop themselves and they can work on it. Now let's say there's a different developer who want a similar setup in his laptop also. What you do, assume there's a Git repository. You take a image of all these containers. You can also create images. Create image of all these containers. Save those images into a Git repository. Right? And the second developer, he will download all those images to his laptop and set up the environment there. All it takes is less than a second, right, to complete create all these containers from these images. So what advantage do you see? Now the Git repository contains the code, the source code, plus the environment where this code will run. Does that make sense? So it not just right now these images means they are also even they are very much small sized, right? All it takes is some 100 MB or that much small size images. If you put those images in the the Git repository now contains the code. Of course, the code is inside the individual containers. Also, which environment you are going to run that code, that is also right. The uh, right, whether it is Ubuntu, whether it is running Apache, right, whatever software that need to be installed, extra libraries or binaries, you would install them in individual containers before you would back them up into a Git repository, and every developer can create such an environment on their laptop simply by getting this image and creating the respective containers from these images. And Docker would not cause any overload onto your laptop. And even if you expand it further, you are going to keep an image repository. This image repository would serve the necessary images of your Docker containers. And there are different machines, there are developers computers. These are developers computers, and this is a testing environment that contains multiple machines. And this is another development environment that also contains multiple machines. So you can actually even expand it further rather than creating individual machines in development and testing environments. Even those environments also you can set up using Docker. And one big advantage with this kind of setup is developers are testing on the same library versions your software as the other developers, as you do in testing environment, as you do in development environment. So every environment will actually look alike, which means you will get a better better testing better testing environment because all of them are looking alike. So there is no chance that this machine is running Apache 2.2 and this environment is running Apache 2.4 because the environment is actually backed up, and it is from this backup you created such environments. Makes sense, right? So uh, through a Docker, the continuous integration is pretty easier compared to the normal continuous integration.
Basically, if we want to save the the whole environment once we set up with the necessary installations, how do we do that? We do that by using an image, or how do we save it?
We will create a image. The same images that you downloaded from Hub, you can create your own images by running .image command, which will back up a container to get an image out of it.
Okay.
So it's more like, I mean, it's a less than 1 second step to create an image or restore an image in a container. So that much fast it will be, and that much efficient because if it is image, I run one image, the same image the other guy is running. I can confidently say that we are testing on the same environment.
Basically, is it similar to snapshotting an instance from the AWS environment? Is it similar?
It's not similar. Yeah, I mean, the way of imaging is kind of similar, correct? But yeah, think about VMware, right? VMware also you can snapshot a VM. What all things the snapshot will contain? Whatever the VM contained, Obviously, that would include the operating system. But how about a Docker image? Will that contain the operating system? No. So it's like the other images or snapshots or AMIs in AWS, but this is the difference. It does not contain your operating system. It contains only some specific files which are necessary to run this OS. I mean, to make this container look like a separate OS, whatever additional libraries are required, that would be contained in the container. That's it.
Okay, Basil, got it.
And at any point of time, you can run this command docker ps. So let me log in. If you run the command docker ps, you can actually see the containers that you have right now. I have one container, and this container was created from the image. Remember, I ran this command docker ps, sorry, docker run. Using this command, I created a container from this image. So if you run the command docker ps at any point of time, you can actually see the list of containers that you currently have. There is one which I have created 18 minutes ago, and it is, I executed bin bash command, and uh, on that container, so whatever command that you had executed will show up here. So all these things you can see. Okay, so one more thing, these containers run inside your host like a process, right? Think about this. This is your host machine, your EC2 machine, the host machine. And the host machine has a kernel, of course, right? It has a kernel itself. And it is the kernel that takes care of the process management. There are number of processes running in the host machine itself, right? There can be lot of process. The host machine is a nothing but a Linux machine, Ubuntu server. It contains a number of processes. So it's the kernel that manages this process. Let's say I'm going to create containers inside this host machine. I install Docker and I am creating containers. The memory management of this container is also done by the same kernel, host kernel. So it is more like, I mean, whenever the container need memory, kernel will assign the memory to them. Whenever kernel finds that some container is overloading the entire host, it will kill that container. So just like how a Linux machine work, your EC2 machine will continue work and handle the containers in the traditional Linux way, which is more like, think about, you have 10 GB RAM, right? And individual containers need, maybe this is Apache container, and there are a lot of requests coming to Apache, then the container need more memory to handle that. And this is a database container running MySQL database. Whenever there is no query being run on the database server, the load is very normal. It doesn't need memory. Otherwise, it need a lot of memory. So all these containers are running different applications, which would, the amount of CPU and memory these containers would need can vary depending on the situation. It can vary. So what if this container is not using some memory? Kernel will detect that it is not using memory. It will free up that memory and assign that memory to some different, I mean, that memory become available to be assigned to some different containers, just like how a kernel should work. In case of hypervisors, this was not the case. Basically, you would specify, okay, this VM will have, there are exceptions, but it is not efficient exceptions. You would generally you would specify this VM will have 1 GB RAM and 1 CPU, and that's it. It will have 1 GB RAM and 1 CPU, no matter what. If this container is not using any of this, still you cannot. This is not free. This is a research resource to this particular virtual machine. In case of a hypervisor, But in here, as you can see, it's a kernel. They are running as a process. Each containers are running as a process, and kernel takes care of the memory management. Whenever the process need time, it will give memory to the process. Whenever it doesn't need time, it will free up the memory. So an efficient usage of memory and CPU would also happen when you have Docker. And yeah, so Docker ps command would show you all the Docker process or the Docker container. These are the containers. Right now I have only one. If you want to delete any container, you can run this command. Docker stop is a command. Docker stop space container ID. This will stop the container. If you run the command, you can see it is gone. Or sometimes think about your Jenkins. I have one thing to add. Think about your Jenkins. What Jenkins want to do is it want to do some testing. Right? In Jenkins, you have the source code available. It is deployed, and you want to do some unit testing to be running or some kind of testing to be running in different types of machines. Of course, if it is working in Linux, you should check that in Windows also. You should check that in different Linux flavors. You should check in Ubuntu, you should check in Red Hat. Like that, there are different machines where you want to test your software, and you want to do it as part of your continuous integration process. Right? You want to test the software. You have some executable file which you want to run on all these environments. Your Jenkins has limitations. Stopping container would remove the container. You cannot get them back. If you want to create a new container, you should be able to run the command again to create the container. Okay, so think about Jenkins as part of the continuous integration process. Jenkins want to do test some executable file in multiple environments. This is Ubuntu, this is Red Hat, this is CentOS, this is Debian, this is Windows, right? This is Windows 2008. Like that, there are different operating systems. And in all these operating systems, probably Windows does not apply here, but yeah. In all these environments, you want to execute a particular war file or jar file. What Jenkins need is these many slave machines where it can execute it, right? You need to add the slave machines into Jenkins, and there should be one Windows slave, one Ubuntu slave, one Red Hat slave, one CentOS slave, like that. You need a lot of slave machines. And most of the situation, this is not practically possible. What you can do is you can install a Docker plugin in Jenkins. By default, it's already installed. And inside the Jenkins job, you can run this command docker run ti, the same command that we had executed here. Docker run -ti, whatever command that you want to execute. Let's say Ubuntu, whatever command that you want to execute. For example, execute the jar file java space something.jar. So I'm doing some checking some executable file by running this command. Assume this is some command which I want to run. I want to run this inside a Ubuntu container, or I want to run this inside a CentOS container. So I can simply run this command inside the Jenkins job, which will do the thing. You don't really need a separate machine. You can simply create a Docker container, run it, and what this command will do is it will execute this command and terminate it. That's it. So maybe I would put a simple command ls. What this command will do is it would run the ls command inside this Ubuntu container. It would create a container from this image and run the command inside that container. Or I want to run it on a CentOS machine. I can type like this CentOS. Unable to find. If it does not find the image, it will automatically download the image from hub.docker.com and it will run it. But still, all it takes is, even for downloading also, it need 2 or 3 seconds extra. That's it. So now the same command I executed on a CentOS machine. So same command I want to execute on a Red Hat machine. You got it right. There is nothing called Red Hat. RHEL, maybe it's Red Hat. Yeah, you got it right. So Fedora or Debian, whatever operating system I want to run the command, I can use the image and run the command. That's it. It will create the container, run the command, terminate the container. That's it. So if I want, instead of ls, I put bin bash, then I would be permanently taken to the bash shell. That is what that you have seen in the previous example. So now I am inside a Debian container. You have this flexibility. So you can create a shell script. I mean, you have the option, right? Execute shell inside Jenkins job. So you choose that option, execute shell, then run this command. Whichever operating system that you want to run the command, you run it on whatever operating system you want just by in a Docker container. Okay, so there are two ways you can create the containers, either by uh, Docker run command, that you know, Docker run ti image name would actually create a container, or there is a tool called Docker Compose. If you install Docker Compose, and then you get an option to create an YML file. Inside this YML file, you can specify, I want the image to be created, the container to be created from this particular image, and I want the image, uh, I want some custom settings for the container. Let's say if it is a database container I am creating from some database image, I want to create the container, and I also want to set up some root password for my database. So some custom settings. And you can specify some port forwarding settings. I mean, how people from outside will connect to the container, right? You know that container connects to the other container or host operating system through a local network, not through a public network. So people who is on the internet, how they can connect to the container. So those settings you want to specify. So like that, whatever custom settings you want to configure inside your container, you can put them down together inside this YML file. And then you run this command docker compose up, it will automatically read this YML file, and as per whatever specification that you had written inside this YML file, it will create your containers. So we will see that first I want to install Docker Compose, then only I can do all these things. So in order to install Docker Compose, first I need to install pip, which is nothing but a Python module. I'm going to install Python pip first, followed by Docker Compose. So So I'm going to run this command, installing Python pip. So install Docker Compose. Okay. And now I am going to open the file Docker Compose YML. Maybe I'll create a folder. Let's say WordPress. I'm going to create a file. Here I would specify the settings. Let's say container name WordPress. I want to create a container called WordPress. Then I would specify the settings image WordPress, image WordPress. So like this I can specify port forwarding settings I can specify. So like that I can specify different settings inside the docker compose.yml file. Then if I run the command docker compose up, then automatically it will read this file. It will find out the images, the list of image it want to download. It will download the image, then create the containers accordingly, whatever you mentioned there. So I will show you. Like I said, we don't have plan to go in. All right. We will set up how you can do a WordPress install using Docker. Then we will wind up with Docker. That's all we are covering in Docker. We are not going into the orchestration side of Docker. If those who are interested, there is something called Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a tool which is a Docker orchestration tool that you can use for orchestrating multiple Docker host machine and making them work together to build a infrastructure. So actually that is not something we are covering in this training, but those who are interested, you can learn how to do the Docker orchestration. Docker orchestration, if you search, you will get some tutorial. And Kubernetes is a tool that are very popularly used. This is by from Google, right? It is very popular to do this kind of Docker orchestration, basically running lot of Docker host machines together and building your infrastructure. That's what it all means, but we are not going to that. So what we will do is using this Docker Compose, how you can create a WordPress environment. Docker Compose file, Docker file is a different concept. Docker file is, I don't know where you heard it actually. If you want to share any file or write the configuration inside about what configuration a container should have, some customization you can do yourself inside a Docker file, and it would read that file and organize your Docker container that way. Docker compose.yml file uses the image properties of that container to create. So I will show you how it look like. Docker part 2. Okay. So what we are going to do is So my intention is I want to set up a WordPress environment, but I don't want WordPress and MySQL to be inside the same container. That's not the purpose of Docker. I want, this is my EC2 machine. I want to create one container that will run WordPress, the other container that will run MySQL, and the WordPress will connect through a local network. I told you, whenever the machines are created, they are connected through a local network. Through a local network, WordPress will connect to the database machine, connect to the database. So in the wp-config.php file of WordPress will automatically be updated with the database credentials of MySQL, so that WordPress can connect to MySQL. So these two containers I am going to create, and along with creating the container, I need to specify some settings. To the WordPress container, I need to tell what DB credential it should use to connect to the MySQL database. To the MySQL database container, I need to tell which database you want to create, what name, username and password that you want to create for the database. All these things I need to tell to my database machine. Right? So when you do this, and also set some port forwarding to specify that if any connection come from outside from internet, they hit on specific port on the EC2 machine, configure some port forwarding. If somebody connects to this port on the host machine, they will automatically get redirected to the container. Shashank, actually we are not going in depth. What I would do is I would send you some link. I would get some tutorials and send it to you about the Docker file. Docker file is something that we are not planning to cover here, but I would help you with some articles. So yeah, this kind of port forwarding settings you can specify. If somebody connects on a particular port on the host machine, to which port in the container they will be forwarded to. So let me go ahead and, okay, first I will show you the settings of the WordPress image. First, let me search for the WordPress image in hub.docker.com. There is a Docker WordPress image here. Click on the WordPress image. You would be taken to the WordPress page. And you know this is the command you need to run if you want to manually download this image. But that is not what I am looking for here. What I am looking for, I want a way how I can configure my docker compose.yml file so that it can connect to the database correctly, and also it should be able to set up some port forwarding. This is what I want. If somebody connect from outside on a specific port on the host machine, how their request will be redirected to the container machine. So assume I created a container. This is running WordPress. Obviously it is running Apache also, right? Apache or some web server it would also be running. Even I don't know what web server is it is using, but we can find out. That's not a big deal. So I have this container and I have WordPress installed inside this container, and I want anybody who is browsing from outside, I can tell my Docker that if somebody connects on port 8080 on the host machine, automatically redirect that request to port 80 on the container. So like this, I can set up some port forwarding. Host machine 8080 will forward to container 80. So if I specify that port forwarding, then if anybody from outside tries to connect to port 8080 on host, they will be automatically redirected to the container machine. So those things I need to specify in the YML file. So I will take a look. Okay, over here I can see. Either you can see it here, or if you want to look at for the different environmental variable, there is a list here. Let's say I want to specify what is the database host, what is the database user, what is the database password, right? Database name, database table prefix. So these are different custom settings which I can put inside my wp config.php, and I can specify my own value to these settings. And by providing whatever value I inside the YML file, I am telling WordPress that these are the settings you need to use in your wp config.php. So yeah, over here you can see this is how the Docker Compose will look like. The container names, there are two containers here I mentioned. WordPress is one container, MySQL is another container. So from which image this WordPress container will be created is what indicated by this line. So these are the settings for the WordPress container. From which image it will be created, restart it always, what kind of port forwarding settings, port 8080 on the host machine will be forwarded to port 80 on the container. Environment, if you want to set one of these environmental variable, for example, if I set the database WordPress password as example, then inside the wp config.php file of the WordPress container will automatically get updated with this password. So these are the settings I would specify for WordPress. And over here, I want to create one more container. I want to create a MySQL container from this image. There's an image called MySQL in hub.docker.com. From this image, the container will be created. Environmental variable, I am setting some password. The root password of MySQL, I am setting here. And I will show you the MySQL container also. Search for MySQL. This is the MySQL image. You can see what are the different other variables that you can specify. Let's say you want to create a MySQL root password. For setting the right MySQL root password, you can actually use this parameter. MySQL database, if you want to create a database, the container will be created, and also a database will also be created inside the container. You can specify the database name by using this attribute. MySQL user, if you want to create a user and password, you can specify MySQL user and MySQL password, and the user and password will be created. So like this, I can specify different settings. So automatically these settings will apply whenever I create this container. Whatever settings which I specified here under the environment will apply whenever I create this container. So that's what it is. And I'm going to create my docker compose.yml file with the content. Okay, let me. Basically, I want to create two containers. One is WordPress and one is MySQL. And here I specify the details of WordPress, from which image it will be created, right? And links, actually it is through these particular links I am specifying to which container WordPress container will connect for MySQL access, database access. Ports, what it means is, if I specify these settings and if I create this container, if somebody from outside connect on port 8080, it is like your Apache proxy, they will be redirected to the container on port 80. Right? Apache listens on port 80 inside this container that contains WordPress. Environmental variable, I want this password, WordPress will use this password to connect. WordPress will use this password to connect to the database. And remember, when I create the database password, I should create the same password. Of course, here I am creating the MySQL container from this image, and I am mentioning the MySQL root password to be example, and the same password I need to specify here in WordPress so that WordPress can connect, right? So basically, you got it right. This is WordPress container, and this is MySQL container. And inside the MySQL container, I am mentioning I want MySQL root password to be example. So the container will be set up with the password example. In that case, my WordPress will use the same password. It has to use the same password to connect to the MySQL database. So I put example here also. Make sense? So I'm going to save this file.
Can you explain why we use links again, please?
Links is basically, yeah, sure. Basically, you are telling WordPress, if you go to here, you can find the details. If you search for your WordPress image, you can see here itself, you can see what is meant by links. Okay, it's not here. Basically, links is typically used for telling your WordPress container that it want to connect to the MySQL container for the database access. And I think probably that's not mandatory. I copied an earlier version, but it works, right? Earlier, it does not, the WordPress container does not find the MySQL container by default. You need to tell the WordPress container that this is the container you want to connect to in order to get database access. That's what links does. So I'm going to run this command docker compose up, and both MySQL and WordPress image need to be pulled from hub.docker.com. That's what happening right now. MySQL, I think it's done. No, not yet. Yeah, it's done. Now database WordPress is being pulled.
Basically, if there are two database MySQL containers, how would the WordPress container know which one to connect? Because in the link we only specified MySQL as a name, right?
We specified the name of the container.
Yeah, it was specified like MySQL. So if there are two MySQL containers, how would the WordPress container know which one to connect?
The container will have a different name. You would name it like MySQL1, MySQL2. You will not create container with the same name. It's not possible. You need to have different names for container, and the container name is what you put under links.
Okay, basically.
Right? And also, yeah, if you want your WordPress to connect to a particular host, you can put it here. In the WordPress itself, you have the option to specify the exact host name. But in this particular case, if it is, these settings are typically used if you already know the host IP. If you want your WordPress to connect to a specific host for database access, you can specify this environmental variable. Okay.
So basically, we can do it either by name or by IP address. We can do both, right? Is it?
Links is used for specifying the container it will connect to. In that case, you don't need to use the DB host. This is a environmental variable that you are setting, right? And under the environmental, this parameter, right? DB password. What this parameter indicate is that the WordPress container will use this password to connect to the MySQL container. Like that, you can specify WordPress DB host to tell WordPress that connect to this particular IP address for database access. Sometimes assume you have a RDS instance. You are not using MySQL container. Instead, you are using a RDS instance. So in such situations, you want your WordPress container to be connecting to the RDS instance. So in such situations, you can specify the host as the RDS name endpoint. So in this case, the links does not apply. You are hard coding. You are telling manually that this is the host name to which WordPress should connect to. Okay, so ours is done. Actually, we are done, and yeah, and you can see the logs here itself. Let's say now I am going to browse for my WordPress website. How can I browse it? For that, I had already set up some port forwarding on the host machine. I can connect to port 8080. So I can browse the URL, IP address of my EC2 machine colon 8080. The request will be automatically sent back to my container on port 80. So let me run this. First, I will open the port 8080 in the firewall. So browse for this URL, IP address colon 8080 of your EC2 machine. You can actually see you are connected to database. You are taken to the direct install page of WordPress. Click on continue. Then it will ask you for the website details, my blog. You know how to, what is this? Click on install WordPress and you are taken to your WordPress is installed. It did not ask you for any database credentials. That it automatically took from the settings that you had provided in Docker compose.yml. Right, so this is it, and actually those who are interested, you can explore more into, go through these tutorials. What is a Docker file? And instead of WordPress, there is something called Drupal. Drupal is also a very popular PHP framework. The library you can find it here. The image you can find it here. If you search for Drupal, you can see the Drupal image here. If you go to the image, you can see the config Docker compose YML file. This is the Docker compose.yml file you need to use for Drupal. It will connect to, it's not MySQL connection. If you want, it doesn't really matter actually. If you want to connect to MySQL also, what? Yeah, you can use this same links parameter that you used in WordPress to connect to a MySQL database. So I will show you. So copy this same Docker compose.yml file. Volumes, yeah, fine. Let it be. Whatever settings, let it be. You are making some customization in Drupal where the Drupal modules are going to be saved. WordPress also has modules and plugins. Similarly, Drupal has its own modules and some profiles and some themes. These are different Drupal settings that you are mentioning here. Let them be as they are. Don't make any change. In addition, you add that MySQL step, whatever we had added in our WordPress, the same steps you add it here. Links, MySQL, colon MySQL. Then instead of Postgres, you want to, Postgres is also a database, relational database software like MySQL. So I don't want you to use Postgres. I want you to use MySQL. But both will definitely work. But yeah, use MySQL. And in the environmental variable here under Drupal, you need to specify the MySQL password, just like we did for WordPress. Like this, you need to specify the password for MySQL. And yeah, that's it. That's all you need to do. And the MySQL container, you can create the same as here. Make sure that the password matches. And you are adding links extra to tell your Drupal container that this is the container you need to connect to. And do that as an assignment, and also just go through this link which I sent you, Docker orchestration. And Kubernetes. So if I get any videos, I will definitely share it with you. Actually, I don't have the recorded classes for both of these, Kubernetes and Docker files. So if I get any, I will definitely share them in the drive. But right now, I don't have. Yesterday's video I haven't shared. I will share it. Yesterday's video and all the PPTs which are missing, I will verify and I will upload it on there.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. Cool then. So tomorrow we are going to start with chef, one of the most important topic in our training, right? Actually, whenever you look out for a job change and all, right? I mean, config management is the one sure thing that they are looking for, right? Probably even if you are insecure with the other stuff, config management is something every company is a must. It's a must-have thing with no escape. So, and it could be we are left with only Chef, Puppet, and Ansible config management. And out of this Chef, Puppet, and Ansible, we are covering Chef in depth. Puppet and Ansible would be an overview and the comparison with Chef. We will see how to set up Ansible, how to install and configure Puppet, and what are the difference between Ansible and Chef or Puppet and Chef, right? That is the only thing that we are left with, the config management. We will be done with our training by next week is what I believe, right? By 29th of December, I want to wind up. In the worst case, it's going to be 2nd of January.
Basil, you were telling about the Python classes.
Python classes we would cover on 30th and 31st. 31st would be the new year, right? Python classes, either we have to cover, okay, this weekend is not possible. I don't think people would be there. Next weekend also. So maybe we will cover that on 6th and 7th. Right, we have Python pending, which we are going to cover on 6th and 7th. Oh. Bottom module we are covering along with Python. Right. Bottom module is a module in Python that we would be including in the Python training. So consider January 1st week to be our last week. Right? Chef certification, it's good to have. Chef, Ansible or Puppet certification, it's good to have. Right? So when you are taking certification, maybe I would prefer taking an AWS certification, which is a better option. I don't think nobody would ask you if you are chef certified, right? I mean, it's a good certification, but if you take another certification like AWS or something, that would add lot of value to your profile.